In the far reaches of the known galaxy, where thousands of worlds circled strange suns, there was one story everyone knew. It was not a story of treasure. It was not a story of peace. It was the story of Earth. Some called it a lost world. Some called it the first home of a forgotten race. Others said it never existed at all. Most people laughed whenever the name was spoken. Earth was a joke. Parents told children that if they did not sleep, the humans of Earth would come to take them away. Traders used the name to sell fake maps and old relics. Drunk pilots claimed they had seen blue oceans and green forests in deep space, only to be laughed out of every port bar. No one had proof. No one had coordinates. No one had ever returned from a real journey to Earth, if anyone had ever gone looking in the first place. Because of that, the galaxy decided long ago that Earth was nothing more than a fairy tale. Commander Vale did not care much for fairy tales. He stood on the command deck of the cruiser Aegis, staring through the great front window into the black sea of space. Far ahead, stars burned like cold fire. Behind those stars waited the enemy, the Dravic Empire. Their fleets had crossed 3 sectors in less than 2 months. Colony after colony had fallen. Worlds that once traded food, metal, and medicine now sent only silence. Vale's jaw tightened. He had seen what the Dravic left behind. Burned cities, broken stations, empty skies. The Empire did not rule with kindness. It ruled with fear. A soft voice came from behind him. "Commander, new reports from the borderline." Vale turned. The speaker was Mira, his communications officer. Young, sharp-eyed, and faster with numbers than anyone on the ship. She held a glowing data pad in both hands. "Well?" Vale asked. Myra's face darkened. "Sector 9 has fallen. Their defense fleet lasted 23 minutes. A heavy silence spread across the bridge. Vale took the pad and scanned the details. 23 minutes. That was all it took for 6 warships and 2 stations to vanish. "Any survivors?" he asked. "Very few." Vale handed the pad back. Around him, officers tried to stay focused, but fear moved through the room like smoke. They all knew what this meant. The Dravic were coming closer. "How many days until they reach Rin?" Vale asked. Mira checked again.
4.
Maybe less. Rin was the Alliance border world. If it fell, the road to the inner systems would open wide. Trade lanes, shipyards, civilian worlds, everything beyond it would be exposed. Vale looked back into space. 4 days. He had fought in many battles, but this one felt different. This time, there was nowhere left to retreat. At the navigation station, Officer Bram tried to lighten the mood. "Well," Bram said with a weak grin, "maybe now is the time for the humans to return." A few crew members chuckled. Another officer joined in. "Yes, let Earth rise from the mist and save us all." More laughter followed. Vale did not smile. He turned slowly toward them. "Is something funny?" he asked. The room became quiet at once. Bram cleared his throat. "No, Commander. Just trying to keep spirits up." Vale stepped closer. "Keep them up with discipline," he said. "Not old jokes." Bram nodded quickly and returned to his console. Mira watched Vale carefully. "You don't like the Earth stories." "I don't like false hope," Vale answered. But deep inside, that was not the full truth. Years ago, when Vale was still a cadet, he had met an old explorer at a forgotten station near the Outer Rim. The man had worn torn clothes, smelled of engine oil, and carried a small metal coin. On one side of the coin was an image of a blue world. On the other side was one word: Earth. The old explorer had claimed he got it from a silent ship drifting in dark space. A ship built from metal no one could identify. Vale had asked where the ship came from. The old man had smiled. "From home," he said. Then he disappeared the next morning. Vale still remembered that coin. He never told anyone. "Commander?" Mira said. Vale blinked and returned to the present. "Yes. We are receiving a public channel transmission from a civilian transport. They request escort to Rin. Patch it through." A frightened voice filled the bridge. "This is cargo vessel Anna. We have families aboard. Please respond. We hear the Dravic are near." Vale answered at once. This is Commander Vale of the Alliance cruiser Aegis. Stay on our signal path. We will escort you. The civilian captain sounded close to tears. Thank you. The channel closed. Vale looked around the bridge. This is why we hold, he said firmly. Not for myths. Not for legends. For people. The crew straightened in their seats. Fear remained, but now purpose stood beside it. Hours later, the Aegis moved through the stars with a civilian ship behind it. Ahead waited Rin, and beyond Rin waited war. In a dark command chamber far away, Dravic fleets prepared to strike. Across the galaxy, people prayed to gods, armies, and luck. And somewhere beyond every charted map, in a place no one believed was real, silent machines began to wake. 4 days later, the border world of Rin filled with ships. They came from every corner of the Alliance. Heavy cruisers with scarred armor. Small patrol craft held together by fresh, weld lines. Cargo ships changed into troop carriers. Old mining vessels fitted with cannons that looked too large for their frames. It was not a grand fleet. It was everything they had left. Commander Vale stood on the upper deck of the cruiser Aegis and looked down at the crowded space around the planet. Hundreds of engines burned bright in the dark. Repair drones moved from hull to hull like insects. Signals crossed in every direction. Below them, Rin turned slowly. The world was dry and rocky, with wide deserts and 2 shallow seas. It was not rich or beautiful, but it sat at the gate of the inner systems. Whoever held Rin controlled the path deeper into Alliance space. That was why the Dravic were coming. Mira stepped beside him, holding a report screen. Latest count, she said. 212 combat ships ready. 30 more may join by tomorrow. Vale took the screen and read quietly. Too few. Many of those ships were damaged. Some had crews with little training. Fuel and missile stores were lower than expected. Their strongest battleship had only half its shield grid working. How many enemy ships? Vale asked. Mira already knew the answer. Estimated 600. Maybe more. Vale handed the screen back without a word. Far below, transports descended through Rin's thin clouds. Civilians were still being moved into underground shelters. Food stations were overloaded. Hospitals had no empty beds. The whole system was holding its breath. A sharp voice sounded from the lift door. Commander Vale. Vale turned. Admiral Stone entered the deck with 2 guards behind him. He was old, broad-shouldered, and moved with the stiff walk of a man who had spent too many years in armor. A pale scar crossed one side of his face. Vale saluted. Admiral. At ease, Stone said. He walked to the window and stared at the fleet outside. Ugly sight. Vale said nothing. Stone gave a dry smile. Not because of the ships. Because I know how many won't return. Mira lowered her eyes. Stone turned back to Vale. War Council in 10 minutes. Bring every honest number you have. I'm tired of hopeful lies. Yes, Admiral. The command chamber of Rin Station was full when Vale arrived. Officers from many worlds sat around the large circular table. Some wore military uniforms, others simple defense jackets. A few argued even before the meeting began. We should fall back now, one captain said. Save the fleet for the inner systems. And leave Rin undefended? Another snapped. Millions live there. They will die if we stay too. Stone entered, and the room became silent. He sat at the head of the table. Enough. Reports. One by one, commanders spoke. Fuel shortage. Low ammunition. Weak shield coverage. Civilian evacuation incomplete. No reserve fleet coming. Every report sounded worse than the last. Finally, Stone looked at Vale. Your assessment? Vale stood. If the Dravic attack in full force, he said calmly, outer defense lines will last less than 1 hour. Inner orbit maybe 2. Ground shields on Rin can hold longer, but once orbital guns fall, the planet will be open. A heavy silence followed. One officer muttered, Then we are already dead. Vale ignored him. Stone leaned back. Any path to victory? Vale answered honestly. Not by strength. Some faces hardened. Others looked away. Stone nodded slowly. Then we use brains. Ambush points, mine fields, false retreat lines. We bleed them for every kilometer. The room straightened. That was something. Plans began at once. New formations, trap zones, emergency signals, last stand positions. They were planning how to survive impossible odds. Later that evening, Vale returned to the Aegis. The ship hummed with nervous energy. Crew members rushed through halls carrying ammo crates, tools, and sealed ration packs. No one wasted time. In the mess hall, Bram sat with several officers. When Vale entered, they quickly stood. At ease, Vale said. He was about to leave when he heard Bram whisper, "If Earth is real, now would be a fine time." A few tired laughs followed. Vale stopped. He looked at them for a moment, then sat at their table. The officers stared in surprise. "You all know the story," Vale said. Bram nodded carefully. Lost world. Human warriors. Big ships. Bigger guns. Children's nonsense, another officer added. "Maybe," Vale said. They waited. "When soldiers know death may come," Vale continued, "they speak of legends for one reason. Hope." Mira asked from the doorway. She had entered quietly. Vale nodded.
"Hope matters," he said.
"But do not wait for myths to save you. If Rin stands, it stands because of the people in this room." No one laughed now. Bram gave a small nod. "Understood, Commander." Vale rose and left. Hours passed. The fleet took battle positions around the planet. Mines were hidden in dark space. Fighter wings were fueled and armed. Medics prepared triage bays. Then alarms rang across every ship. Myra's voice came over the bridge speakers. Long-range sensors detect incoming signatures. Vale ran onto the command deck. "How many?" "Too many to count cleanly," Mira said. "Enemy fleet entering outer system." The main screen lit up with red markers.
Rows. Waves.
Endless waves. Even seasoned officers went pale. The Dravik had arrived. Their spearhead ships moved first, black hulls, sharp-edged, built for war. Behind them came carriers, missile barges, troop transports, and heavy command vessels. 600 had been a hopeful guess. There were more. Admiral Stone's voice came across Fleet Command. "All ships, battle stations. Hold formation. Today we draw the line." Vale gripped his command rail. Outside the view window, Alliance engines brightened one by one. Tiny lights facing a storm. Then another signal flashed across Myra's board. She frowned. "Commander, strange reading." "What kind?" "A transmission burst from deep outer space. Old code. Very old." "Origin." She looked confused. "Unknown." The room went silent. "Play it," Vale ordered. Static filled the bridge. Then one calm voice spoke in clear Alliance standard. "Distress signal received. Hold the line." For a few seconds, no one on the bridge of the Aegis moved. The strange message hung in the air like a ghost. "Distress signal received. Hold the line." Then it ended. Only the soft hum of ship systems remained. Commander Vale looked at Mira. "Play it again." She tapped the console. The same burst of static came first, followed by the calm voice. "Distress signal received. Hold the line." Bram frowned. Could be enemy trickery. "No," Mira said quickly. "The signal does not match Dravik systems. Their language code is different." Vale stepped closer to her station. "Trace the source." "I'm trying." Her fingers moved fast across the panel. Lines of data raced over the screen. Her face slowly changed from focus to confusion. "It makes no sense," she said. "What does that mean?" "It means the signal came from outside the system, very far outside. But it arrived with no delay." "That is impossible," Bram said. Mira nodded. "Yes." Vale stared at the stars on the main screen. Beyond them, the Dravik fleet kept advancing in steady formation. "Send the recording to Admiral Stone," he ordered. "Priority level 1. "Already done," Mira said. A moment later, Stone's rough voice came through Fleet Command. "All captains, ignore unknown transmission. Enemy forces closing fast. Prepare for engagement." Bram muttered under his breath. So much for mystery. Vale did not answer. Something about the voice bothered him. It was too calm, too certain, not like a trap, not like a frightened civilian. Whoever sent it believed help was coming, or believed they were the help. Across the defense line, Alliance ships moved into final positions. Minefields armed silently in dark space. Fighter wings launched from carriers. Orbital cannons on Rin rotated toward the stars. The people on the planet below crowded into shelters, listening to emergency sirens echo through city tunnels. On the bridge of the Aegis, Vale watched enemy numbers rise. Range, he asked. 40 minutes to first weapons contact, Mira replied. Any reply from command about the signal? None. Vale folded his arms. Send a wideband request. Mira looked at him. To the unknown sender? Yes. She opened a channel. This is Alliance Cruiser Aegis. Unknown vessel. Identify yourself. They waited. Nothing came back. Bram gave a nervous laugh. Maybe the ghosts are shy. Vale ignored him. Then another officer called out from sensors. Commander, enemy scouts moving ahead of formation. The screen zoomed in. Small Dravik ships raced forward like hunting dogs. They're testing our lines, Vale said. Orders? Hold fire until they enter marked zones. The crew obeyed. Minutes later, the first scouts crossed into the hidden minefield. Space exploded. White flashes tore through the dark. 3 enemy ships vanished instantly. 2 more spun out burning. Cheers broke across the bridge. But they died quickly when hundreds more scouts replaced them. The Dravik had numbers to waste. On the enemy flagship, General Kron watched calmly as his first wave was destroyed. He was tall, gray-skinned, and armored in black command plates. His narrow eyes showed no anger. Alliance mines located, an officer said. Good, Kron replied. Send second wave around the edges. He looked at the image of Rin turning on the screen. Break them quickly. Fear spreads faster when witnessed. The Dravik fleet surged forward. Back on the Aegis, alarms began to sound. Enemy fighters incoming. Missile locks detected. Shield teams ready. Vale took command without raising his voice. All batteries engage. Interceptors launch. Keep formation. The battle began. Blue beams cut across space. Missiles streaked like fire. Fighters twisted between exploding wrecks. The Aegis shook as its guns fired in repeated bursts. Direct hit on enemy frigate. Bram shouted. Another blast struck their shields. Shield lost 5%, Mira said. Vale remained steady. Return fire. The fleet around them became chaos. Alliance ships fought hard, but the Dravik line kept pressing forward. For every enemy vessel destroyed, 2 more advanced. A carrier near the left flank burst apart in a ball of flame. Rin's orbital guns fired from below, punching holes through enemy cruisers. Still they came. Hours seemed to pass, though only minutes had gone. The bridge lights flashed red. Outer line collapsing. Mira reported. Sector 7 retreating. Admiral Stone requests reinforcement. Vale clenched his jaw. Take us forward. Bram looked shocked. Commander, that puts us in direct heavy fire. I know. The Aegis accelerated into the thickest fighting. Its guns roared at close range. One Dravik destroyer split open from bow to stern. Another rammed a damaged Alliance ship, destroying both. Vale gripped the rail as the cruiser shook violently. Shield lost 20%. Then Mira froze. Commander, what now? That signal. Vale turned sharply. What about it? It's back. Play it. Static hissed again. Then the same calm voice returned. Distress signal received. Hold the line. This time a second sentence followed. Arrival in 7 minutes. The bridge fell silent. Bram whispered. Arrival of what? Vale stared at the stars beyond the battle. No ships were visible. No fleet signatures. No hyperspace traces. Nothing. Could be psychological warfare, Bram said quickly, though he sounded unsure. Mira shook her head. No known system can send a signal like this. Another violent hit rocked the ship. Shield lost 32%. Vale made his choice. All ships, transmit to Fleet Command. Unknown contact claims arrival in 7 minutes. Stone answered almost at once, anger in his voice. Are you mad, Vale? We are in battle. Sir, if there is any chance. There is no chance. There are only your guns. Use them. The channel cut. Vale said nothing. Outside, another Alliance cruiser exploded. Rin's upper defense platforms were falling one by one. The Dravik center line moved closer to the planet. Mira looked at the timer on her screen. 6 minutes, she said softly. The next minutes felt endless. The Aegis fought through smoke, fire, and debris. Crew teams dragged wounded officers from broken consoles. Emergency bulkheads sealed damaged sections. Vale watched ships die on every side. 5 minutes. Another enemy wave struck. 4 minutes. Rin's orbital shield flickered. 3 minutes. Admiral Stone's flagship lost engines. 2 minutes. The Dravik launched troop transports toward the planet. Vale looked into the black void beyond all fighting. Nothing. Then Myra's eyes widened. Commander, energy spike. Where? She pointed to empty space behind the enemy armada. The stars there began to bend. Light twisted inward like water draining into a hole. Bram stepped back in fear. That's not possible. The dark split open, and something enormous started to come through. The tear in space grew wider. At first, many on the Aegis thought it was a sensor failure. Stars bent in strange angles. Light twisted and stretched. The black void behind the Dravik fleet shimmered like water under a storm. Then the first shape appeared. It was not a fighter. It was not a cruiser. It was something far larger. A dark metal bow pushed through the broken space, sharp and heavy, like the front of a mountain. Blue light rolled across its armor as it forced its way into normal space. Massive engine ports glowed, with controlled fire. No one on the bridge spoke. The ship kept coming. Section after section emerged until its full size became clear. It was longer than a city, wider than most stations. Its hull carried rows upon rows of weapon batteries, shield towers, launch bays, and armor plates thick enough to shame any known battleship. Bram's mouth fell open. That is one ship? Vale did not answer. He was staring at the symbol painted across the side of the vessel. A blue circle. Around it, a ring of stars. Mira whispered, unknown markings. Vale felt a cold shock run through him. He had seen that blue world before.
On an old metal coin.
Earth. Before anyone could react, a second tier opened beside the first. Then a third. Then 10 more. The void split again and again across the battlefield as giant warships poured through hyperspace. Some were long and narrow like blades. Others were wide, heavy, and built like moving fortresses. Carriers with layered decks. Cruisers with spinning gun towers. Dreadnoughts covered in scars from old wars. They formed lines with machine precision. Thousands of them. The battle slowed to silence. Alliance crews stopped firing. Dravik crews stopped advancing. Even missiles already in flight drifted uselessly through wreckage and smoke. All eyes turned to the impossible fleet. On the Dravik flagship, General Kron rose from his command chair. Report. His sensor officer trembled. Unknown fleet entering system in massive numbers. No registry match. No known signatures. How many? The officer swallowed hard. Still counting. Kron narrowed his eyes. Who are they? Before anyone answered, every screen in the command chamber went black. Then new words appeared. Unauthorized aggression detected. Stand down. Kron slammed a fist against the rail. Restore control. But the screens remained dark. On the Aegis, Mira looked at her console in shock. They just entered our systems too. Hostile. Vale asked.
No.
They are overriding all combat channels. The speakers on every Alliance and Dravik ship came alive at once. A calm voice filled the stars. Attention all vessels. This war zone is now under human command. The bridge crew stared at one another. Human. Bram sat down slowly. No. The voice continued. Alliance forces, identify yourselves and withdraw behind defensive marker lines. Blue beams of light projected into space, forming safe retreat zones behind the new fleet. Dravic forces, power down weapons immediately. There was a pause. Failure to comply will be treated as hostile intent. Vale looked at Mira. Did they say human? She nodded weakly. The myths were speaking. Some Alliance captains hesitated, but Admiral Stone made the decision. All Alliance ships, fall back behind blue markers. Do it now. Damaged vessels turned away from the battle line. Rescue craft rushed to tow crippled ships. The Aegis reversed engines and moved behind the glowing boundary. Vale kept his eyes on the giant, unknown fleet. They did not move wildly or boast loudly. They simply took control. The Dravic, however, chose pride. General Kron snarled at his officers. Target nearest unknown vessel. Fire all forward guns. Sir, we do not know their shields. Fire. The Dravic flagship unleashed a full broadside. Heavy plasma rounds and missiles streaked across the void toward the nearest dark warship. They never reached it. A silver barrier flashed once around the unknown vessel. Every incoming shot vanished in sparks. Then the human ship answered. One beam. Just one. A narrow line of white light crossed space and struck the Dravic flagship through the center. For 1 second, nothing happened. Then the enemy command ship split cleanly into two burning halves. Gasps erupted across the Aegis bridge. Bram whispered, "One shot." Mira forgot to blink. Vale remained still, but inside, he felt the world changing. Panic spread through the Dravic fleet. Some ships fired wildly. Others tried to flee. It did not matter. Human warships moved forward in perfect formation. Rows of rail cannons thundered. Metal slugs punched through enemy cruisers and shattered them from within. Drone swarms poured from launch bays like clouds of steel insects. They cut apart fighters and disabled engines with terrifying speed. Shield walls rose between Alliance ships and enemy fire, protecting those who had been losing moments before. The battle became one-sided in less than 5 minutes. Where the Dravic had pressed with confidence, they now burned in confusion. Vale watched a human cruiser ram through 3 enemy destroyers without slowing. Another vessel launched missiles that changed direction mid-flight and struck hidden targets behind asteroids. No one in the galaxy fought like this. No one in the galaxy built like this. Admiral Stone's image appeared on the bridge screen. For once, the old man looked speechless. Commander Vale. Yes, sir? Tell me I am not dead. Vale almost smiled. I believe we are very alive, Admiral. Stone looked at the human fleet behind him. Then history has become very strange. The channel closed. Minutes later, enemy resistance collapsed. The surviving Dravic ships powered down, or jumped blindly into deep space. Troop transports surrendered. Fires still burned across the wreck field, but the battle itself was over. The impossible had happened. Rin still stood. The crew of the Aegis began to cheer. Some laughed. Some cried openly. Bram grabbed Mira and spun her in a circle before realizing what he was doing and stepping back in embarrassment. Vale allowed the moment. They had earned it. Then every screen lit once more. A new message appeared. Earth Defense Fleet. Command requests meeting. Below the words was one line. Commander Vale. Board the flagship. The bridge fell quiet again. Mira looked at him. They know your name. Vale stared at the message.
How?
No one had an answer. Outside the view window, the largest ship in the fleet slowly turned toward them. Its armored sides shone with battle light. Its hull carried the blue world symbol. Earth had not only returned. Earth had come prepared. The battlefield around Rin had gone quiet. Only drifting wreckage and rescue signals moved through the dark. Fires burned inside broken ships. Escape pods floated between metal debris. Medical craft from the Alliance rushed in every direction. And above them all stood the fleet of Earth. Their warships held position in perfect silence. They did not celebrate. They did not chase the fleeing Dravic ships. They simply watched, like giants who had already won before the battle began. Commander Vale stood on the bridge of the Aegis, reading the message again. Command requests meeting. Commander Vale. Board the flagship. Bram looked uneasy. Maybe you should send someone else. Vale gave him a flat look. Such as you? Bram quickly shook his head. No, Commander. Mira tried to hide a smile. Then her face turned serious. Be careful. We still know nothing about them. Vale nodded. That is why I'm going. A second message arrived. Docking path transmitted. Escort craft inbound. Through the front window, a small black shuttle detached from the largest human ship and flew toward them. It moved with smooth speed, silent and precise. Bram muttered, even their shuttles look dangerous. Minutes later, Vale entered the Aegis docking bay with 2 guards behind him. He ordered them to stay back. If I do not return in 2 hours, he said, assume I was insulted by their food. Neither guard left. The bay doors opened, and the human shuttle settled onto the deck with barely a sound. Its surface was dark metal, marked only by the blue planet symbol. A side hatch lowered. 3 figures stepped out. Humans. Every person in the bay froze. They looked similar to many species in shape, 2 arms, 2 legs, but something about them felt different. Strong posture, calm eyes, controlled movement. The one in front wore a dark uniform with silver lines. His hair was gray, his face older, but his body stood straight as steel. He looked directly at Vale. Commander Vale. Yes. The man gave a short nod. Admiral Ross. Earth Defense Fleet. Vale stared for 1 second too long. You speak Alliance Standard. Ross raised an eyebrow. We built half of it. Vale had no answer. Ross gestured toward the shuttle.
Come.
We have much to discuss. The shuttle crossed the distance to the flagship quickly. As they approached, Vale saw the true size of the vessel. It was beyond reason. The ship's hull stretched farther than some cities. Gun batteries lined the sides in layers. Shield towers rose like buildings. Hangar bays glowed with movement inside. The name on the hull came into view. EDS Titan. Vale read it twice. Titan, he asked. Ross glanced at him. One of the smaller command ships. Vale almost choked. Inside, the flagship was clean, bright, and organized. Wide halls, smooth metal walls, no wasted movement. Crew members walked with purpose, but without panic. They were not tense after battle. They were prepared for the next one. Vale noticed something else. There were humans of many looks and ages. Some pale, some dark, some tall, some short. Men and women both in command positions. No shouting. No fear. This was not chaos held together by force. It was discipline. Ross led him into a large command chamber. A curved window showed the stars outside. Tactical displays floated in the air. Officers worked quietly at stations. At the center stood a round table. Ross motioned to a seat.
Please.
Vale remained standing for a moment. You expect trust quickly. Ross sat first.
No.
I expect practicality. Vale slowly took the seat. Then let us be practical, he said. Who are you? Ross folded his hands. We are humanity. That answer means nothing. It means, Ross said calmly, the stories were true. Vale studied him. Earth exists. Yes. Then why hide? Ross did not answer at once. Instead, he touched the table. A star map appeared above it. Thousands of systems lit up. This galaxy, Ross said, has repeated the same cycle for centuries. Expansion.
Greed. War.
Collapse. Then repeat. The map flashed with old conflict zones. Humanity once joined that cycle, Ross continued. We nearly destroyed ourselves before reaching the stars. Vale listened in silence. So we left, he asked. Ross nodded. We withdrew beyond mapped space. We rebuilt. We learned. We watched. Watched while worlds burned? Ross's eyes sharpened. Watched while we became strong enough to stop those who burn them. Vale leaned back. You waited a long time. We hoped we would never need to return. Ross tapped the table again. Images of Dravik attacks appeared, destroyed cities, slave camps, fleets firing on civilians. When the Dravik began cleansing whole populations, waiting ended. Vale looked away from the images. Even for him, they were hard to watch. A younger human officer entered. Admiral, Dravik survivors transmitting surrender terms. Ross nodded. Accept total disarmament only. The officer left. Vale frowned. You command as if you own this war. Ross looked directly at him. No, Commander. We command as if we intend to end it. The room fell quiet. Vale realized something important. This was not a rescue fleet sent for one battle. This was an arrival. Why ask for me? Vale said. Ross gave the smallest hint of a smile. Because 4 years ago, on a rim station called Talon Reach, you questioned an old explorer about a coin. Vale's blood ran cold. You know that. We know many things. The old man was one of ours. Vale stood suddenly. You tested me? Ross remained calm. We observed character. Most mocked him. You listened. Vale slowly sat again. Outside the great window, Earth warships moved into new formations around Rin. Myra's voice came through Vale's wrist communicator. Commander? Are you alive? Vale pressed it. Yes. Her relief was clear. What is happening? Vale looked at Ross, then at the impossible fleet. He answered softly. The fairy tale just became real. Ross rose. Good, he said. Then let us begin the next chapter. The command chamber of the Earth flagship Titan was silent after Admiral Ross spoke. Let us begin the next chapter. Commander Vale still sat in his chair, but his mind was far from calm. Everything he thought he understood about the galaxy had changed in a few hours. Earth was real. Humans were real. And they were not weak survivors. They were something far more dangerous. A tactical display floated in the air above the table. It showed the battlefield around Rin. Dravik wrecks drifted in broken clusters. Alliance ships held behind Earth's defensive line. Human warships formed a wide ring, locking down every escape route. Ross stood beside the map. Report status, he said. A young human officer replied instantly. Dravik fleet destroyed at 60%. Remaining ships are retreating in scattered groups. Planetary invasion units have been neutralized. Another officer added, Alliance losses reduced due to shielding support. Civilian casualties minimal. Ross nodded once. Good. Secure orbit. No further Dravik movement. Vale watched carefully. You ended the battle too quickly. Ross glanced at him. Too quickly?
Yes.
They had numbers. A drawn-out fight would have been expected, but your fleet broke them in minutes. A slight pause followed. Ross spoke calmly. Commander Vale, we did not come here to match their expectations. Vale frowned. Then what did you come for? Ross did not answer immediately. Instead, he tapped the table. A new set of data appeared. Ship designs, weapon systems, energy patterns. Vale studied them. His eyes narrowed. These weapons. I have never seen anything like this. Ross replied, because no one here has survived long enough to build them. In the lower hangar deck, Vale was taken for a brief tour. Bram and Mira were allowed to join him under strict escort. Both of them looked like they had not slept in days. The hangar doors opened. What they saw made them stop completely. Human fighters were lined in perfect rows. Small, sharp ships with folded wings and glowing cores. But it was not their shape that shocked them. It was what they carried. Rail-driven plasma systems. Adaptive shield generators. Self-guided micro-missiles that adjusted direction mid-flight. Bram whispered, "Those are fighters?" A human technician nearby smiled slightly. "You expected flying metal boxes?" Mira shook her head. "We expected something normal." The technician looked confused. "What is normal in war?" No one answered. They moved further into the hangar. A massive door opened at the far end. Inside stood something that made even the escorts quiet. A war machine larger than any ship Vale had ever seen in service.
It was not a ship.
It was a moving fortress. Heavy armor plates covered its body. Cannons rotated along its spine. Energy cores pulsed like a heartbeat. It hovered slightly above the ground, supported by anti-gravity fields. Bram stepped back. "That is not a ship." A soldier beside him replied, "It is a ground assault carrier, used when planets refuse to surrender." Vale stared at it. "You bring that to a battlefield?" The soldier nodded. "When needed." Mira asked carefully, "How often is it needed?" The soldier did not answer. That silence said everything. Back in the command chamber, Ross continued explaining. "The Dravik Empire is not new to us," he said. Vale looked up. "You have fought them before?"
Yes.
"In their early expansion cycles." "And you let them grow this large?" Ross's expression turned colder. "We were not always watching." Vale understood then. Humanity had limits. Or choices. Or both. Ross continued. "When we returned to active monitoring, the Dravik had already consumed 17 systems." Vale leaned forward. "So, this is not a rescue mission for Rin?" "No," Ross said. "Rin is a warning point. If they reach deeper space, more civilizations will fall before we can respond." Mira spoke quietly. "So Earth is a shield." Ross shook his head.
No.
"Earth is the line that ends the war." A sudden alarm interrupted the discussion. A red light flashed on the table. An officer spoke urgently. "Admiral, Dravik communications detected. They are regrouping at outer system edge." Ross turned. "Show me." A hologram expanded. The remaining Dravik fleet had formed a tight cluster. Damaged ships were being repaired mid-flight. Reinforcements were arriving from distant jump points. Vale studied the pattern. "They are preparing for a second attack." Ross nodded.
Yes.
"They will not surrender." Bram frowned. "After what they saw." Ross replied, "The Dravik do not measure survival. They measure control." Vale stood. "Then they will return stronger." Ross looked at him. "Correct." A long pause followed. Vale asked, "And your response?" Ross turned to the tactical map. "Simple." He tapped once. The entire Earth fleet shifted formation on the display. For the first time, Vale saw something new. Not defense. Not reaction. Preparation for total strike. Ross spoke. "We end their ability to continue war." Mira whispered. "You mean destroy them?" Ross looked at her. "I mean remove their capacity to threaten anyone ever again." Bram swallowed hard. "That sounds final." Ross nodded. "It is." Vale studied him carefully. "And if other empires rise after them?" Ross answered without hesitation. "Then they will learn the same lesson." Silence filled the chamber. Vale realized something important again. Humanity did not return to join the galaxy. Humanity returned to reshape it. A new message arrived on Ross's console. A Dravik transmission. It was not surrender. It was a challenge. A voice spoke through broken translation. "We will return with all fleets. We will burn the new intruders. We will reclaim Rin." Ross listened quietly. When it ended, he simply said, "Confirmed." He turned to Vale. "Commander, you will witness the next phase." Vale stood slowly. "What phase?" Ross looked at the stars beyond the window. Human counteroffensive. Outside, the Earth fleet began to move. And for the first time since the war began, the galaxy was no longer watching Earth arrive. It was watching Earth prepare to strike back. The Earth flagship Titan moved slowly through the quiet space above Rin. The battle was over, but tension had not left the fleet. Every human ship stayed in formation, as if waiting for something worse to return. Commander Vale stood again in the command chamber. This time, he was not just an observer. He was part of something much larger. Admiral Ross faced the tactical display. "The Dravik will regroup within 12 hours, he said. "We will use that time." Vale asked, "Use it for what?" Ross turned slightly. "To explain why we are here." The room became silent. Even the officers stopped working. Ross tapped the table. The hologram shifted. It no longer showed battle data. It showed history. Old star maps. Abandoned colonies. Dark regions of space. Vale leaned forward. "This is not current data," he said. "No," Ross replied. "This is the past you were never given." A new image appeared. A peaceful human colony world. Green land. Blue oceans. Bright cities. Then the image changed. Burning skies. Broken cities. Mass evacuation ships fleeing orbit. Vale watched carefully. This was Earth, he asked. Ross nodded. This was one of many cycles. Mira spoke quietly. Cycles? Ross explained. The galaxy is large, but intelligent life always follows the same pattern.
Growth.
Expansion.
Conflict.
Collapse. He zoomed the map. Thousands of systems appeared. Humanity did not begin as strong, Ross said. We began as many others did. Divided. Fighting. Weak compared to the stars. Vale listened without interruption. Ross continued. We reached the stars too early. Before we understood them. Before we understood each other. The image changed again. Human fleets fighting each other in deep space. Civil wars. Broken alliances. Entire worlds destroyed by human weapons. Bram whispered. You fought yourselves? Ross nodded once.
Yes.
Almost destroyed everything. Vale studied the display carefully. So Earth disappeared because you lost? Ross shook his head.
No.
Because we survived. He enlarged a hidden region of the map, far beyond known space. There was only one solution. Stop expanding. Stop reacting. Step back. Mira frowned. You ran away. Ross looked at her. We withdrew. A pause. Vale asked. From everything?
Yes.
We erased our presence from known space. Destroyed signals. Hidden routes. Shut down colonies. Removed ourselves from galactic records. Bram blinked. That is impossible. Ross replied. It was necessary. The hologram shifted again. A small group of ships traveling into deep unknown space. No enemies. No pursuit. Just silence. These were the last Earth ships, Ross said.
Vale studied them.
Where did they go? To rebuild. Not power. Discipline. Ross looked at Vale directly. We decided something very simple. If humanity could not exist without becoming a threat to others, then we would stop existing where others could see us. Silence filled the room. Mira asked carefully, And you stayed hidden all this time? Yes, Ross said. We watched. Quietly. From beyond known charts. Vale leaned back. So the stories of Earth became myths. Ross nodded. Legends are easier to ignore than warnings. A new alert flashed on the table. Dravik fleet movement detected. Ross dismissed it with a wave. They're still assembling. He turned back to Vale. There is another reason Earth vanished. Vale waited. Ross spoke more slowly now. Because we learned what happens when we intervene too early. Mira asked, And what happens? Ross answered, The galaxy depends on balance. If one force interferes too soon, conflict spreads faster. Empires grow stronger. Wars become larger. Vale frowned. So you allowed suffering? Ross did not deny it. We observed. We waited for conditions where intervention would end the cycle, not extend it. Bram looked uncomfortable. That sounds like control. Ross replied calmly. It is survival. Vale stood. And now? Ross turned toward him. Now the cycle has reached a point where waiting is no longer an option. The hologram shifted again. The Dravik Empire appeared as a growing dark mass across systems. They are not just expanding, Ross said. They are consuming, destroying cultures, removing diversity, standardizing everything under force. Mira whispered, Why? Ross answered simply, Because they believe order can only exist through total control. Vale asked, And Earth disagrees? Ross gave a short nod. We believe order comes from balance, not domination. A pause followed. Then Ross added, That is why we are here. The chamber lights dimmed slightly. A new projection appeared. A timeline. Humanity's return points. Hidden fleets activating. Ships waking from silent storage. Colonies rejoining command networks. Vale watched carefully. You are not inactive. Ross smiled faintly. We were patient. A final image appeared. Earth itself. Not destroyed. Not lost.
Alive.
Protected by massive orbital defenses far beyond anything Vale had imagined. Bram stared. It is real. Ross nodded. And it is ready. Suddenly, another transmission arrived. Dravik Command Channel. A voice full of anger and fear. We will destroy the hidden ones. We will erase Earth from existence. Ross listened. Then he answered calmly into the open channel. You already tried. He closed the link. Vale turned to him. So, this is not just a defense anymore. Ross met his gaze. No, Commander Vale. This is the moment Earth stops hiding. He stepped toward the window. Outside, the fleet began shifting again. Larger formations formed behind the first wave of warships. Energy cores brightened. Engines ignited in silent synchronization. Vale understood. This was not survival. This was preparation for judgment. And the galaxy was about to learn why Earth had ever disappeared in the first place. The space above Rin was no longer a battlefield. It was a waiting zone. Wrecked ships drifted silently, like dead metal. Rescue teams from the Alliance moved carefully between debris fields. Human warships held position in wide formation, forming a protective ring that stretched far beyond the planet's orbit. But no one relaxed. Everyone knew the Dravik would return. Commander Vale stood once again on the bridge of the Aegis. The familiar hum of his ship felt different now. After seeing Earth's fleet, everything he once considered powerful now felt small. Mira stood beside him, watching the tactical display. They are regrouping faster than expected, she said. Vale nodded. They lost a battle, not their will. Across the system, Earth fleet commanders were already moving. On every screen, Admiral Ross appeared. All human task groups confirm readiness, he said. Phase 1 begins now. Vale leaned forward slightly. Phase 1. Ross answered calmly. Counteroffensive. The space around Rin changed slowly. Human ships began to reposition. Not in defense lines, but in layered strike formations. Larger ships moved to the center. Smaller fast ships spread outward like a net. Alliance officers watched in silence. Bram whispered, They are not defending anymore. Mira finished the thought. They are hunting. Far beyond Rin, in the outer system, the Dravik fleet was rebuilding. General Kron stood on the damaged bridge of a replacement command ship. Around him, engineers worked non-stop. Broken hulls were being repaired mid-flight. New ships arrived through jump points every few minutes. His face was cold. We lost one battle, he said. Not the war. An officer hesitated. Human fleet strength is higher than expected. Kron slammed his hand on the console. Numbers do not matter. Resolve does. He turned toward the tactical map. Prepare full return strike. We will crush them with everything we have. Back at Rin, Admiral Ross received the same update. The Dravik are forming a full assault wave, an officer reported. Ross nodded once. Good. Bring them in. Vale frowned. You are letting them gather strength? Ross looked at him. We are ending them in one move. Silence followed. Mira asked carefully, one move. Ross pointed at the hologram. Human fleets began to converge. From multiple systems beyond Rin, more Earth ships arrived. Some came from hidden jump corridors. Others from deep space stations that had never been shown before. The size of the fleet increased rapidly. Vale realized something. This was not the full strength of humanity before. This was only what they chose to reveal. A new alert appeared. Dravik fleet entering main system lane. They were coming. And this time, they were united. Hundreds of warships, carriers, and command vessels moved together in one massive formation. Energy shields lit up like a wall of fire. The Dravik were no longer cautious. They were angry. General Kron's voice echoed through all channels. Destroy everything. Ross raised his hand. All human fleets. Hold position. Vale blinked. Hold.
Now.
Ross nodded. Let them enter the trap zone. Mira whispered. Trap zone. Vale looked at the map. A large empty region had been marked between Rin and the outer system. No mines. No ships. Just space. He understood. This is where you want them, he said. Ross replied. Yes. The Dravik fleet crossed into the marked zone. Nothing happened. No mines exploded. No ambush appeared. Kron frowned. Where are they? His sensors officer answered nervously. No human ships detected in forward space. Kron narrowed his eyes. Then they are hiding. He raised his voice. Advance deeper. The Dravik fleet moved forward. Still nothing. Then suddenly, every Dravik sensor went silent. All at once. Kron stood up. Report. No answer. Then the space around them changed. Not physically. Structurally. The void itself seemed to shift. Vale watched from the Aegis Bridge as all human fleets outside the trap zone activated at once. Ross spoke quietly.
Now.
From hidden positions beyond detection range, Earth ships revealed themselves. Not from one direction. From all directions. Above.
Below.
Behind. Inside blind zones. The Dravik fleet had walked into a controlled sphere of space surrounded completely by humanity. Mira gasped. They are everywhere. Bram whispered. We were never seeing the full picture. Ross gave the final command. Begin compression. Vale turned sharply. Compression? Ross nodded. Close the net. Human ships fired, not to destroy immediately, but to force movement. Energy fields activated in overlapping layers. Gravity disruptors engaged. Jump suppression grids activated. The Dravik fleet found itself trapped inside a shrinking battlefield. Kron shouted, "Break formation." But it was too late. Every direction they moved met resistance. Human fleets were not attacking randomly. They were shaping the battlefield. Vale watched in silence. This is not a fight, he said quietly. Ross answered.
No.
It is containment. The Dravik fleet tried to fire back. But human shields absorbed everything. Then came the counterfire. Precision strikes. Coordinated bursts. Targeted disables instead of explosions. Dravik ships began shutting down one by one. Not destroyed.
Captured.
Kron's voice broke through one last time. This is impossible. No fleet can control space like this. Ross replied over open channel. We can. The connection ended. Within minutes, the Dravik formation collapsed into scattered disabled ships floating in silence. The battle was over before it truly became a war. Vale stood still. They never had a chance, he said. Ross looked at him.
They did.
Long before they reached here. Mira asked softly, what happens now? Ross turned toward the drifting enemy fleet. Now, we end the command structure.
He paused.
And then we decide what the galaxy becomes next. The Dravik fleet was no longer a fleet. It was a trapped mass of broken ships, drifting inside the human containment zone. Engines flickered weakly. Weapon systems were offline. Communication channels were jammed by Earth's suppression fields. Commander Vale watched it all from the bridge of the Aegis. There was no celebration now. Only silence. Mira studied the tactical feed. They are fully contained. No jump capability. No coordinated movement. Bram leaned forward. So, it's over? Vale did not answer immediately. He had learned that nothing was ever truly over in war. On the main display, Admiral Ross appeared again. All Dravik combat forces are neutralized, he said. But their command structure still exists. Vale looked up. Their emperor. Ross nodded once.
Yes.
He has not responded yet. Deep inside the Dravik Empire, far beyond the battlefield, a hidden world burned with activity. The Imperial throne station was massive, built inside a hollowed asteroid cluster. Thousands of officers ran across glowing corridors. Emergency alarms echoed through command halls. On the highest level, Emperor Varn stood still.
He was not panicked. He was calculating.
Around him, generals argued loudly. We have lost the forward fleet. The humans are too advanced. Our ships are being disabled without destruction. Varn raised one hand. Silence returned instantly. He looked at the holomap showing the containment zone. So, he said slowly, the myth is real. A general stepped forward. My emperor, we can still regroup outer fleets. We can. No, Varn interrupted. His voice was calm, almost thoughtful. This is not a battle of fleets. He turned slightly. This is a battle of control. Back at Rin, Admiral Ross received a new transmission. Dravik Imperial Channel opened. But it was not a surrender. It was a direct signal from Emperor Varn himself. Vale watched as Ross accepted it. The hologram shifted. A tall Dravik figure appeared. Dark armor. Sharp eyes. No fear. Only authority. I am Emperor Varn, the voice said. Commander of the Dravik Imperium. Ross replied calmly. Admiral Ross. Earth Defense Fleet. Varn studied him carefully. So you are the hidden ones. Ross nodded. We were. A pause followed. Then Varn smiled slightly. You have done well to trap my fleets. Ross answered. This is not the end. No, Varn agreed. It is the beginning of understanding. Vale stepped closer to the hologram. He is not afraid. Mira whispered. He should be. Ross listened quietly. Varn continued. You believe you have won because you control the battlefield. But war is not decided by ships. Ross replied, it is decided by capability. Varn's eyes narrowed. Then show me your capability. Suddenly, a new signal appeared across all human and Dravik channels. Unknown. Unregistered. It bypassed all encryption layers instantly. Myra's eyes widened. That signal, it's coming from outside both fleets. Vale frowned. Origin. Unknown. But it is massive. Ross turned sharply. Trace it. But before any response, the signal activated across every screen. A new voice spoke.
Cold.
Ancient. Non-human in tone. Dravik Imperium detected. Human expansion detected. Conflict threshold reached. Silence filled every ship. Even Emperor Varn paused. Ross spoke carefully. Identify yourself. The voice replied. We are the Arbitration Corps. Vale looked confused. Arbitration. Mira checked her systems. No record of this. The voice continued. Galactic Stability Protocol has been breached. Multiple dominant species in active war state detected. Varn stepped forward in his own chamber. This is not your concern, he said sharply. The voice did not change. All conflicts at this scale fall under containment review. Ross narrowed his eyes. Containment by who? A pause. Then the answer came. By us. Across the containment zone, Dravik ships began to flicker. Not destroyed. Not attacked. Analyzed. Vale watched in shock. What is happening to them? Mira answered. Their systems are being scanned completely. Bram stepped back. That's impossible. No fleet can scan an entire armada that fast. Ross remained still. This is not a fleet, he said quietly. Emperor Varn's face darkened. You are not gods, he said. The voice replied. We are enforcement. Suddenly, every Dravik ship froze in space. Human ships also received the same effect, but only partially. Earth systems remained stable, as if protected. Vale noticed it immediately. They are not targeting us the same way. Ross nodded slowly. Because we are not the priority. The Arbitration Corps continued. Humanity classified as returning high-threat civilization. Dravik Imperium classified as expansionist extinction-level threat. A new set of data appeared across all displays. Maps of entire galaxies. Conflict lines stretching beyond known space. Civilizations erased. Systems sterilized. Mira whispered, there are more wars everywhere. Vale felt the weight of it. They were not alone in the galaxy. Not even close. Varn shouted, we will not be judged by unseen machines. The voice answered instantly. Judgment is already complete. Ross turned slowly toward Vale. This changes things. Vale asked, how? Ross looked at the drifting fleet. Because now we are not the only force deciding the outcome. A final transmission appeared. Containment directive. Dravik Imperium scheduled for neutralization. Human fleet assigned observational role. Bram blinked. Observation. Mira whispered. They are removing control from both sides. Emperor Varn stared in silence. For the first time, his confidence cracked. Ross closed his eyes briefly. This is bigger than Earth, he said. Vale looked at him. Then what do we do? Ross opened his eyes. We adapt. Outside, the stars seemed unchanged. But the rules of war had just been rewritten by something far beyond either empire. And neither humanity nor Dravik truly understood what had just arrived above them. The space around Rin had fallen into an uneasy stillness. The Dravik fleet was frozen in containment fields, their ships unable to move, fire, or even communicate freely. Human warships held formation at a safe distance, watching carefully. But now, something else shared the battlefield. The Arbitration Corps. No one knew if it was a fleet, a machine, or something beyond either. It simply existed in every system at once, silent and absolute. Commander Vale stood on the Aegis Bridge, staring at the shifting holographic map. The words still echoed in his mind. Containment Directive. Dravik Imperium scheduled for neutralization. Mira broke the silence. So, they are going to destroy them? Ross's voice came through the channel. Not immediately. They evaluate first. Bram frowned. Evaluate what? We already fought them. Ross replied calmly. We fought their ships, not their system. Far away from Rin, inside the containment sphere, Dravik's ships floated like dead metal. Emperor Varn stood in his command chamber, watching the same impossible presence surround his empire. His generals no longer shouted. Even their fear had turned into confusion. What are they? One officer asked. Varn did not answer at first. He watched as strange light patterns moved through space like invisible hands measuring every ship. Then he said, something we did not build. On the Earth flagship Titan, Admiral Ross studied the new data. The Arbitration Corps had begun scanning both fleets more deeply. Not just weapons. Not just technology. It was scanning intent. Vale noticed Ross's expression. What does that mean? Ross answered quietly. It is deciding who can be trusted to continue existing in the same space. Myra's eyes widened. That is not judgment. That is control. Ross nodded. Yes. Suddenly, a new object appeared on the tactical map. A massive structure emerged from deep space beyond the containment zone. It was not moving like a ship. It was unfolding. Layer after layer of geometric shapes extended into reality, forming a vast ring-like construct that surrounded the battlefield from a distance so large it almost disappeared into the stars. Bram stepped back. That wasn't there before. Vale narrowed his eyes. It is now. Ross spoke immediately. Arbitration infrastructure deployment confirmed. The structure activated. A wave of energy passed through the Dravik fleet. But there were no explosions. No destruction. Instead, data streams erupted across every screen in both human and Dravik ships. Mira read aloud, confused. They are mapping every ship's design, every weapon system, every command structure. Vale looked uneasy. Why? Ross replied, because they are building a full model of the war. Inside the Dravik flagship remnants, Emperor Varn finally spoke again. This is not judgment, he said. This is replacement. His officers turned toward him. Replacement of what? One asked. Varn stared at the floating data streams. Of us. On the Titan, Vale watched Earth fleets hold steady while the unknown system expanded its control. He asked, if they decide both sides are dangerous, what happens then? Ross did not answer immediately. Instead, he said, we prepare for that possibility. Mira frowned. Even you don't know what they will do. Ross replied honestly, no. They are older than any record we have. A new transmission interrupted everything. The Arbitration Corps spoke again. Conflict analysis complete. Dravik Imperium. Confirmed expansionist extinction pattern. Human civilization. Returning adaptive threat pattern. Vale listened carefully. The voice continued. Both classified as unstable dominant forces. Silence followed. Even Ross seemed tense now. Bram whispered, unstable means what? Mira answered softly, it means dangerous. Then the voice added something new. Historical anomaly detected. The map zoomed out. Far beyond known space, unknown dark regions lit up. Ancient ruins. Dead galaxies. Forgotten war zones that no species had recorded. Vale stepped closer. What are those places? Ross stared at them. I do not know. The voice continued. Multiple extinction events show similar origin signatures. Pattern indicates repeated cycle of dominant species conflict. Mira looked horrified. Repeated cycle? Ross nodded slowly. So this is not the first time. Emperor Varn listened from his broken empire. If this system exists, he said slowly, then we are not the apex. Suddenly, a new alert flashed across all fleets. The outer ring structure began activating secondary layers. Energy lines connected between distant points in space, forming a network far larger than the battlefield itself. Bram asked, "What is it doing now?" Ross answered, "Expanding its reach." A new message appeared. Containment review escalated. External observer detected. Vale frowned. External observer? Mira checked her systems. We are the only ones here. Ross looked up sharply.
No.
We are not. The stars outside the Titan dimmed slightly. Something massive moved beyond normal space perception. Not a ship. Not a fleet. Something watching. Emperor Varn spoke quietly, almost to himself. So, even gods have watchers. The arbitration core delivered its final update for that moment. Phase shift initiated. Final classification pending. The battlefield around Rin changed again. Not in fire, not in destruction, but in meaning. Because now, neither Earth nor Dravik controlled the outcome. Something else was deciding what would come next. The space around Rin had become something no one truly understood anymore. The Dravik fleet was still trapped in containment. Human warships held position in silent readiness. And beyond them, the enormous arbitration structure continued to spread its strange geometric lines across the stars. Everything felt paused, like the galaxy itself was holding its breath. Commander Vale stood on the Aegis Bridge, watching the shifting light patterns across the tactical display. Nothing about this war felt like a normal war anymore. Mira spoke quietly. It is still analyzing everything. Bram rubbed his hands together nervously. I don't like things that analyze this much. Vale did not respond. His eyes were fixed on the frozen Dravik fleet. Then suddenly, the silence broke. A sharp alert echoed across all channels. Not from Earth. Not from Dravik. From the arbitration core. Final review complete. Every ship in the system received the same message. Vale straightened. Final review? Ross appeared on the hololink instantly. His expression was serious.
This is it, he said.
Mira frowned. What is it? Ross did not answer her. He was watching the same message. The core continued. Dravik Imperium, confirmed extinction cycle initiator. On the Dravik side, Emperor Varn stood still as the words appeared in his command chamber. His generals looked at him. For the first time, none of them spoke. Human civilization, conflict adaptive species with containment potential. Vale read it slowly. Containment potential? Ross muttered. They are evaluating if we can be trusted to exist freely. Then the final line appeared. And everything changed. Decision. Dravik Imperium. Termination order approved. The containment sphere around the Dravik fleet began to glow. Not red. Not violent.
White.
Pure and absolute. Bram stepped back. Wait, termination? Mira whispered. They are going to erase them. Vale looked at Ross. Can we stop it? Ross's silence was the answer. Inside the Dravik flagship remnants, Emperor Varn finally understood. He turned to his remaining officers. This is not war, he said quietly. This is judgment. One officer shouted. We can still fight. Varn shook his head slowly.
No, he said.
We were already measured before we arrived. Across space, the arbitration structure activated fully. The geometric ring expanded its inner layers. Energy fields locked onto every Dravik vessel simultaneously. But there were no explosions. No fire. No sound. Only deletion. Ships began to fade from space like erased drawings. Systems shut down at the same moment across thousands of vessels. Armor dissolved into energy dust. Engines went dark and never reignited. The Dravik fleet was not destroyed. It was removed. Vale watched in silence. Bram's voice cracked. They are just gone. Mira could not look away. No wreckage, nothing left. Ross's voice came through the channel, quieter than before. This is what they decided. Vale asked, and if they decide the same for us one day? Ross answered honestly, then we must ensure they never classify us that way. On the Dravik flagship, Emperor Varn stood alone. His empire was disappearing around him, ship by ship, fleet by fleet, command centers going silent. But he did not beg. He did not scream.
He simply said one last thing.
So this is the end of dominance. Then he closed his eyes. In the containment zone, the last Dravik ships vanished completely. The battlefield was empty. No debris, no signals, only silence. The arbitration core spoke again. Threat classification, Dravik Imperium eliminated. A pause followed. Then, secondary classification review. Human civilization. Vale's heart tightened. Ross stepped forward. Here we go. The human fleet went still. Every captain, every officer, every ship waited. Mira whispered, "What are they deciding now?" The core responded, "Human civilization shows adaptive conflict behavior, high survival capability, high expansion potential." Vale looked at Ross. "That sounds like a threat label." Ross nodded slightly. "It does." Then the final part of the message appeared. And for the first time, even Ross looked uncertain. Recommendation: monitoring status, indefinite. Silence. Then another line followed. Earth designated as primary observation node. Bram blinked. Observation node? Mira looked confused. They are watching Earth constantly? Ross replied quietly, "We were never truly hidden." Vale leaned back. "So all of Earth's secrecy, all your hiding, it did not matter." Ross did not deny it. The arbitration structure began to retract. Slowly, the geometric ring folded back into deep space. The containment zone dissolved. The battlefield returned to normal physics. But nothing felt normal, because one empire was gone forever. And something far larger had now placed its attention on humanity. Ross turned to Vale. "This war is over," he said. Vale looked at the empty space where the Dravik fleet had once existed. "Yes," he replied. "But something else has started." Outside the Aegis, the stars shone as usual. But now, somewhere beyond them, an unseen intelligence continued to observe Earth. Quietly,
Patiently.
and without blinking. The war around Rin was finally over. The Dravik Empire was gone, erased from existence by the arbitration core without fire, without noise, and without mercy. The battlefield that once held thousands of ships was now empty space, as if nothing had ever happened there. But no one on the Aegis felt calm. Commander Vale stood on the bridge, staring into the silent stars. The same stars that once felt familiar now seemed different, like something unseen was watching behind them. Mira broke the silence. "It's really over." Bram gave a weak laugh. "I don't think anything is ever really over anymore." Vale did not argue. On the main display, Admiral Ross appeared one last time. His face was calm, but his eyes carried weight. "The Dravik threat has ended," he said. "Civilian systems will begin recovery operations immediately. Alliance Command will assist rebuilding." Vale nodded slowly. "And Earth?" Ross paused for a moment. "Earth returns to Shadow Protocol." Mira frowned. "Shadow Protocol?" Ross explained quietly. "We go back to watching. Not ruling. Not interfering. Just observing." Vale looked at him carefully. "After everything, you just leave again?" Ross's voice softened slightly. "We never came to stay." A silence followed. Then Ross added something else. "But things are different now." Vale asked, "How?" Ross turned slightly, as if looking beyond the screen, beyond the fleet, beyond the system itself. "Because the galaxy has seen us." On the Earth flagship Titan, preparations were already underway. Human fleets that had gathered for war began shifting into new formations. Weapon systems powered down from combat mode into standby. Massive ships that once looked ready to destroy now looked like silent guardians again. Bram watched in confusion. "They are leaving already?" Mira checked the fleet movements. "Not leaving. Disappearing into deep space lanes." Vale understood. They're going back to hiding. But something had changed. Vale stepped closer to the console. Admiral Ross, what about the arbitration core? Ross's expression darkened slightly. It will remain. Myra's eyes widened. It's still here? Ross nodded. It never left. It only judged this conflict. Brem asked nervously, will it come back? Ross replied honestly, if required. The answer left the bridge silent again. Far beyond the system, the enormous structure of the arbitration core finished its final adjustment. Its geometric rings slowly collapsed into nothing. But before disappearing, it sent one last signal across all surviving networks. Observation continues. Vale stood still as he read it. That is not comfort, he said. Ross nodded.
No.
It is reality. In Dravik space, there was nothing left. No ships. No stations. No empire. Only empty systems where a civilization once ruled. But in human-controlled regions, life continued. Slowly, carefully, rebuilding began. Alliance worlds that had nearly fallen now received supplies. Civilian ships returned home. Broken colonies started repairing themselves. And through it all, stories began spreading again. Stories of Earth. At first, people did not believe. They said it was impossible. A hidden human fleet stronger than any empire. Ships that could erase battles in minutes. A species that had watched the galaxy from silence. But witnesses existed now. Survivors of Rin. Crews from destroyed Dravik ships. Even Alliance officers who had seen it with their own eyes. And they all said the same thing. Earth was real. And it had returned. On the bridge of the Aegis, Bram leaned on a railing. So what now? He asked. Mira answered softly, we live. Vale kept watching the stars. That is not the full answer, he said. Bram looked at him. Then what is? Vale paused. He remembered everything. The myths. The laughter. The war. The ships that appeared from nothing. The silence of an erased empire. And the presence that still watched from beyond known space. We learn, Vale said finally. Mira turned to him. Learn what? Vale looked at the empty battlefield one last time. Learn that we are not alone, and never were. On Earth, far beyond normal space, the hidden worlds remained quiet. Massive fleets drifted in deep orbit, unseen by the galaxy. Cities continued under protective shields. Command centers monitored every known system. Admiral Ross stood alone in a wide observation chamber. Stars stretched endlessly outside the glass. A junior officer approached him. Sir, the arbitration core has stabilized. No further activity detected. Ross nodded. For now. The officer hesitated. Do you think it will judge again? Ross looked at the stars for a long moment. Yes, he said. When the galaxy forgets the lesson. Back on Rin, rebuilding stations lit up across orbit. Ships moved like ants repairing a broken world. The scars of war slowly faded. But something remained unchanged. Every captain, every soldier, every civilian who had seen the human fleet knew one truth now. Earth was not a myth. It was not a story. It was not a fairy tale. It was the reason the galaxy still existed. Vale finally turned away from the window. Set course for Alliance Command, he ordered. Mira nodded. Yes, Commander. Bram smiled faintly. Back to normal life? Vale gave a small, tired look. There is no normal anymore. As the Aegis moved away from Rin, the stars ahead were calm. But somewhere far beyond them, unseen and silent, the watchers of the galaxy remained. Earth was still there. And now, so, was its shadow across the stars.